You know, I had a realization recently that a lot of folks who are watching the build on this channel may not have seen all the videos from the beginning and don't necessarily know how I've got to where I am. So I thought I'd take an opportunity today to kind of revisit the overall build and how we got to where we are now. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the shop. This is our 2013 Mitsubishi Fuso FG that I'm slowly turning into an overland camper. So let's start by talking about the truck, the Fuso FG. Why did we choose an FG over, say, an FE or an Isuzu or a Hino? Well, I mean, technically we did start out with a Fuso FE, it's outside. But the key difference here is the Fuso FG is the only truck in this size that's available with four-wheel drive. To be fair, and before all the internet comments starts, I'm talking about North America. We're not as lucky as pretty much the rest of the world, where you can buy several of this type of vehicle in four-wheel drive. But speaking of this type of vehicle, why did we choose this type of vehicle over, say, like a Ford F350, 450, 550, that type of much more common chassis that you can get in four-wheel drive? Well, the main thing is the space saving of a cab over. From front to back, this cab is under 6 feet long, which means when we add a 14-foot long box, we're still under 20 feet long overall. Now that may not seem like a huge deal to some people, but it actually gives us a number of benefits. Number one, it's not that hard to park in a regular parking spot. It's actually shorter than my Ford. Number two, the shorter wheelbase gives us a much better turning radius. I can turn this around anywhere you can turn a car around. Number three, more and more these days, you'll be finding areas that have restricted lengths on entry. What I mean by that is places like national parks, getting onto ferries, and even some streets do not allow vehicles over 20 feet long. Or they may charge significantly more for a vehicle that is over 20 feet long. But we're not at a loss for that short 20-foot length in our capacity. Even though this truck is shorter than my Ford, it's got significantly more payload capacity. Now, as it is becoming somewhat of a more popular platform, we do have the ability to get some aftermarket accessories such as super single wheels, bumpers, and upgraded suspension. Now, all that said, the Fuso is not necessarily perfect, so if you're considering a platform like this, make sure you dig deep online and find out all the things that you could run into. With the newer models, at some point, you're likely to run into issues with the emissions system. If you find one with an automatic transmission, you may have issues with that. There have definitely been a number of recalls on these trucks, so make sure, again, if you're looking at this platform, you dig into the information online. But all that said, we still thought it was the right platform for us, so let's take a look at what we did to the truck before we started the camper. Probably the most obvious is the super single rims. This allows us to run the same rim and same tire front and back. By eliminating the dual wheel in the rear, we're eliminating the possibility of getting stones jammed up between the tires and damaging them, and we're also dropping our overall wheel tire count from 7 down to 5. So even though these 35, or if you choose to run 37-inch tires are going to cost more each, when it comes time to change tires, you're only buying 5 instead of 7. One upgrade that a lot of folks do is upgrading the suspension, a little bit of a lift to accommodate larger tires. One of the reasons we stayed with 35-inch tires is I have not upgraded the suspension for a lift. This keeps our truck a little bit lower, and the smaller diameter tires doesn't give us such a loss in the gear ratio, as these trucks are not the most powerful. Now that sacrifice and a little bit of power is going to give us a better economy. This is only a 3-liter engine, so it's not consuming that much diesel, considering we're moving a big brick. Now on that fuel system with this truck, one of the things I would highly recommend you do if you have one of these and haven't done it, or if you're looking to buy one of these, is install a disaster prevention kit, because the CP4 fuel pump on these engines is definitely prone to failure in North America with the ultra low sulfur diesel. Chassis, suspension, axles, all of that, we simply cleaned up by hand and painted with chassis saver paint. Time consuming? Yes. Difficult? Not really. You can paint chassis saver on with a foam brush, a paintbrush, a spray. It's a self-leveling paint, and basically what you end up with is a really good looking finish that is rock hard and impermeable to oxygen, which means the chassis won't rust underneath it. Now at the same time as painting the chassis, I have done a little bit of metal work on the cab, and we've treated that with chassis saver as well. So really, we haven't done a whole lot of work to the base platform of our project. We've changed the wheels to super single, we've done some work to the fuel system, painted the chassis, and done a little bit of work to the cab. Let's move on to the next phase. If you started watching the channel in the last, I don't know, couple of years, you may not realize this is actually a box sitting on top of a flat deck. It's not one piece. This is a little more evident at the back. This part is the flat deck, and on top we have the box. Now, why would I choose to do it like this? Most people who will build one of these build a box, install it on a torsion-free subframe, which is mounted by springs to the chassis. I have made a box that is sitting on top of a deck, which is mounted to a torsion-free subframe, which is sitting on the chassis. Why the extra step? Well, again, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, if we need to, we can take this off, leave it somewhere, and continue using the truck. This means if the truck needs to go in for service, this doesn't have to go with it, which means we can plop this off, continue to live in it, while we don't have the truck. We can also take this off to make it easier to service the truck or get it into places. We can also take this off and put it on a different vehicle, as this is what takes the most work to fabricate. We could take this off, ship it halfway around the world, buy a different truck with a flat deck, put it on, and continue on. So the short version, why did we do it? Versatility. It gives us options. Now, how hard is it to take this off? Not very. Each corner has a set of holes into which we install an electric jack. There'll be a couple of pins, fairly big ones, and some latches that we undo, and off it will come. So now that we know why we have a separate flat deck, what does it look like? I used the old subframe from the truck. Before I owned it, it was a dump truck, so it had a pretty heavy-duty subframe bolted stiffly to the chassis. Now, we don't want stiff, so I made spring mounts to allow the chassis to flex, which it's designed to do, while not pushing the stress from the chassis flexing into the subframe, because that would end up pushing those forces up into the composite panels and not ending very well. Onto the original subframe, I welded some box tube, and that allowed me to mount the aluminum deck plates using these clips. And it's a little bit hard to see, but in between the chassis and the cab, I welded a small headache rack so that when the camper box is being put on or it's not on at all, there's something there to stop things sliding into the cab. To finish the whole thing up, we applied the same chassis saver paint as we did to the chassis, and I bent and welded up some aluminum front and rear end caps, installed some lights, and for some reason, the video about these lights is the most popular video on my entire channel. I have no idea why. And as you can see, the outer perimeter of the flat deck is made out of a T-slot extrusion. This is going to allow us to attach things to it, such as covers for the exhaust system, storage boxes, and the slide-out deck that I made. And that really is all there is to our subframe flat deck underneath the Habitat box on top of the chassis. Speaking of, let's move on to the Habitat box. This box is made out of foam core composite panels. They are about 38 millimeters thick, which is 1.5 inches, and they're set into an aluminum frame that is made out of bent 1/8 inch aluminum. These bent aluminum pieces form the upper part of the exoskeleton of the Habitat box. The panels were pushed in and glued and taped from the inside. Now the floor is a little bit different in that it is not a composite panel, but it is aluminum sheeting bent into pans with foam pressed into it from the top. On top of that, there's a layer of plywood, so technically it is a composite, but it is not a composite like the rest of the paneling. Why did I do it like that? Again, a couple of reasons. Number one, I could build that for a lot less than I could buy one of these panels. So economically, it made sense to do that. Number two, I could also get a little bit more strength by having a number of ribs of aluminum, which gave me a better opportunity for this to have it self-support when it's not on the truck. Using this method of construction, it gives me a rigid, insulated floor. The plywood on the inside allows me to screw things into it quite easily, and nobody's ever gonna see that it's not a nice white shiny panel because the inside's covered in flooring and the outside is sitting on a flat deck. Now I did just say the inside, so let's go in. And to answer the question that I'm sure, okay, if you keep hearing a whoosh sound, that's not me inserting a whoosh transition, it's snow sliding off the roof. Anyway, back to the question that probably a whole bunch of people have is, why is there a blob of green tape on the door? Well, it's because I haven't made a door stop yet, and when this swings open, it stops it from smacking into the other side. Oh, and one last thing about the door, it's just from Amazon. Check the links in the video description. along with all the other links. I'll try to put as much information in the description of this video, so if there's anything that you've seen here that you're like, ooh, I want that, take a look in the links, you might find it there. I won't spend quite as much time going through the interior because it's a lot more recent, so people are probably more familiar with it, but I will do a quick rundown. Kitchen, cabinets, IKEA. Butcher block countertop, Home Depot. Sink, Home Depot. Cool little marine style slam latches, Amazon. Check the links. Amazon, 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 Amazon. Sounds really weird when you say it that many times. Let's switch to something else. AliExpress, AliExpress, AliExpress. Home Depot, Princess Auto Tubs, Costco. I know, it's not an off-road, it's not a vehicle fridge. It is a simple, cheap Costco, we'll call it a bar fridge. Why? Well, while you could argue that it's not designed for vehicle use, it's not made to be bumped around, and it may not work properly, it probably won't last as long, and it's not really as efficient as a fridge that's designed to operate on 12 volts, because this is a 120 volt fridge, we'll have some losses through the converter. I would say you're totally right. However, these are extremely common, dead easy to swap out if it fails, and not very expensive. So I could have a $1,200 12 volt built-in fridge, and when it fails, I could spend a day and a half trying to take it out to diagnose it, order a couple of $100 worth of parts online to fix it, wait a few weeks, or I could unplug this, slide it out, go to the nearest store, and $100 later, have a new fridge, the same day. Now don't mind the mess, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, I highly recommend spending the money on getting one of these. Our Nature's Head tucks away underneath the bed, slides out into the shower space, and these things are amazing. They don't smell. All you gotta do is empty this every day or two. The back half, which let's be honest, that's the part most people don't wanna deal with. It stays dry, it doesn't smell, it's super easy to empty, and you don't need a black water tank, so it saves space. That is why we chose the Nature's Head. Now clearly I haven't told you the full story of the entire build because, well, it's not finished. Still a big mess. But if you haven't seen it by now, the underlying theme is T-slot extrusion and 3D printed parts. The shower will be here, beside the fridge and the toilet. The bed goes up and down. The kitchen is beside us. The seating area is in the front. I designed the majority of the layout and ideas in SketchUp before we started, and even though there were a couple of tweaks along the way, and I'm sure there will be more tweaks going forward, basically the concept that I came up with before we started is what we're looking at now. There is still a long way to go. There are a lot of components to go in, like our big inverter, air conditioning, clearly the bed lift system isn't finished yet, but I wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed on what we've done over the last 5 years of this build project. So if you're somebody who's been watching this channel from day one, thank you for your support and thanks for sticking it out through this video. If you've been here for half of the time, hopefully you saw some things that helped explain how we got to where we are today. And if this was the first video that you've seen on this truck, I hope it was interesting and I hope you'll subscribe. Now I'm going to put a lot of time and effort into the description of this video to make sure we include a lot of useful information and links. So please take a look at the video description. I think it'll help. Most importantly though, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.